join in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll also note that we had expected Troop 321 to be here, both for the pledge and to present a couple of Eagle Scouts. They had to cancel. They will be here at a subsequent meeting. Item 2, changes to the order of agenda. Are there any changes preferred by the council? Seeing none, no staff. The agenda will stand. Council communications and announcements. Let's see, Matt, would you like to start?
The only one that I can think of, and if Christine would help me out with this, I think we have a candidates night here Thursday night.
Yes, Thursday night, sponsored by the St. Cross Chamber of Commerce, 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock. Okay, so just wanted to remind folks about that.
So candidates night on Thursday?
Thursday,
and that would
7.
be televised as well?
Yes.
Thank you. Is that all, Matt?
Yes.
Bob?
I want to report that Mayor Davids and I attended an event the other day at the Hiller Museum where the Allied Waste folks, the folks who pick up our garbage, showed us demonstration of their new biodiesel vehicles. They are changing 225 vehicles that pick up garbage and trash up and down the peninsula for the 12 cities that are in the group to biodiesel. And they've got 16, I think, of them done so far, and they expect to have them all done by, I think, the first of the year, I believe. Is that correct, Mr. Mayor? I think that's true.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And it was quite Assemblyman Ruskin was there and other folks in the political area, and it was the folks in the Allied Waste are very excited about this, and I think it's a great step to show that San Carlos and the communities of the peninsula once again are out in front on a lot of these issues in the green area.
Thank you. Brad? Okay, let me just briefly introduce and discuss this matter that we were at earlier tonight, which was the appointment of a Citizens Advisory Committee for our general plan process. And Al, I don't see in the room. Oh, Al is in the room. Al will give us a little rundown, and then I'll give you the names of those who will be representing us.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Just in terms of a brief introduction, the staff asked the City Council to do a few things with our General Plan Advisory Committee tonight. We asked the Council to interview residents for the Ad Hoc General Plan Advisory Committee. We also asked you to approve an amendment to the roster of the General Plan Advisory Committee, and also finally appoint the people that you interviewed to the resident seats, and also there are a number of other seats on the roster. And just to back up a little bit, the GPAC's charge is as a knowledgeable body broadly representing the interests of San Carlos, and the charge is for the GPAC to exchange ideas and to analyze issues and to create a public forum so that the community can discuss issues that are facing land use, environmental issues, health and safety issues, and other issues in our community for the next 20 years. So it's a very important group. And with regard to the process, GPAC, there were 15 seats on the GPAC roster going into the interview process this evening. And GPAC members 1 through 8 would be individuals established by city commissions, committees, or other recognized organizations. And so those bodies have appointed their own primary and alternate representative to each of those committees. And you've been provided with a list of those people that have been appointed. And in addition, there was one committee, the Arts and Culture Commission, who has yet to appoint, but they will at their next meeting. GPAC representatives 9 through 15 were individuals with specialized interests from the community at large. And those were the ones that we had asked you to do the interview process for tonight. And I want to thank the council for your time and the energy that you put into the rigorous interview process that we had earlier. We had 31 applications for these seats on the ones that were not the committees or councils. And 20 of those applications were from West Side residents of the city. So we do recognize that the West Side is a much larger area and geographically and in terms of its population. So we understand, but we didn't really anticipate that much interest, and we got a lot of interest, and we really appreciate that. But as a result of that, we only had one position that was established for West Side residents. So what we asked the council to do is there were a couple of open seats that were left open for this sort of a situation where there was an interest that may need to be represented in the future or selected in the future. And staff recommended that one of these seats be recognized for an additional West Side resident due to the interest in the geographic area and population. And so the council made that motion and determined that they would make seat number 14, one of the open positions, a West Side resident position. There was an additional seat. One of the issues that arose was in one of the categories, and so the other seat, seat number 15, which was also an open position, was changed to an at-large person that will be named shortly. So that basically sums up staff's presentation. I'm available to answer any questions, so I'm available.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Al. And I'll mention again, as followed up by Al, that we had a very active interview session. We had wonderfully qualified candidates. It's too bad they can't all serve, but there is a limit of how many you can bring together and get anything done. And I think our number of 16 is pretty much an ideal number. What I'd like to do is read off the areas that we chose and had nominations for, so that the public will know what was done. From the Planning Commission's point of view, they have nominated Joanne Iwaza and Steve Divney as the alternate. The Economic Development Advisory Committee nominated Scott Marsters as the primary and Lori Battaglia as the alternate. Parks and Recreation Commission, Cecily Harris is the primary, Carol Taylor is the alternate. Transportation and Circulation Commission, Jason Mansfield is the primary, and the alternate will be appointed at the next meeting. Youth Advisory Council, we have Brett McCollum as the primary and Chris Coling as the alternate. This is another example of how the youth fits into our program, and we're glad to have them at the table with us. Arts and Culture, both members will be decided at the next meeting. Harbor Industrial Area, Michelle Margiotta is the primary. The alternate will be appointed in the future. And as far as our interviews went tonight, a representative of the business community from the San Carlos Chamber of Commerce, we nominated Martin Miller. Representative of the environmental community, Suzanne Emerson. Representative of the East Side Industrial Area, Nadine Johnson. For the building and construction industry, we put that on hold, feeling that the applicants really didn't fill the bill as we had expected. We move along to number 12, a resident of the residential neighborhood east of El Camino, Pat Bell. Resident of neighborhoods west of El Camino, we have two, Chris Burton and Andrew Klein. And then for the open position, we appointed Don Cook. Don had applied for the building and construction industry. We felt he better filled our open position slot. So those are the appointees, with a few others to be decided. And we're going to hand this back to Al, and he and the group are going to get to work. I will mention to the audience as well that we do plan a town hall meeting on November 10. This will be on a Saturday in the library. It's a general meeting for the citizens of San Carlos to learn more about the general plan process and to have some input as to what they feel the direction of San Carlos should be. This is one of the many meetings that we will be having And Al and his consulting staff and our own staff in City Hall will be coordinating all those functions. So with that, I think we've done our business with the Citizens Advisory Committee, and we'll move along to item 4, which is the approval of the consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar are routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the council, staff, or public request an item to be removed for specific action. Any council members like to remove an item? Hearing none. Staff? Staff has none. Public? Anyone from the public like to remove one? All right, then we'll have a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve items 4A, B, C. Do I need to read a resolution there?
Yes, not the resolution, no.
Just adopt a resolution accepting Alameda de las Pulgas rehabilitation project and authorization for the city clerk to file notice of completion. Item D, item E, and item F.
Very good. Is there a second?
I'll second. And Mr. Grisilli spent a little bit more time with Ms. Doherty and get this.
I'm going to work on that. I'm going to get those resolutions down, Mr. Grocott. I'm going to do that.
Actually, a point of order, we don't read the resolutions, we just read the ordinance. But it's good to hear you reading something.
Would you like me to read anything
No,
else,
that's all
Mr.
right.
Mayor?
All right, we're ready for,
Guess we don't have a lot on the agenda tonight. Huh? Yeah. Stay here all night. Tell your friends.
ready for a vote.
Councilmember Grisilli.
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis.
Yes.
Councilmember Teagle Doherty is absent. Mayor Davids.
Yes. Next, item 5, report to council. We have a report on the citywide survey panel and survey services.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Jeff Malpe. I'm the city's Administrative Services Director. This is an informational item to discuss the staff's proposal to issue a request for qualifications for survey services for the city. This relates to the city's strategic plan, the first goal of the plan, which is to increase economic development and sources of revenue. The goal specifically is to survey the community to determine the level of interest for a potential tax measure in November 2008. We're bringing this informational item forward, as my report indicates, because we're proposing to look at a slightly different type of survey tool than the city's used in the past. This would be looking for firms who set up resident panels that represent various demographics of the city that we can go back to, not only for this intended survey, but any future surveys. We're unsure at this time about what the cost may be. We're estimating a range to set this up of anywhere between $10,000 and $50,000, but we'll know better when we issue the RFQ. With your blessing, as it were, we'll be putting out that RFQ for those services this week. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Jeff?
I have a couple.
Yeah.
In anything like this, as I understand, it's sort of like almost like a Nielsen style survey, right?
I think that's a good way to describe it, yeah.
Right. So it's sort of a dedicated group that we can rely on for all sorts of different feedback. And I think it's an interesting idea. What's always difficult in any survey is, how do you judge the results of it? In other words, how reliable it is and so forth. So where we talk about the qualifications and information that it may include, it would be helpful if we put in there, and I realize we have, on the one here it says, complete contact information for a minimum of 3 recent clients from whom similar services described in this RFP have been performed. That's almost about the installation process. I guess what I'm curious about is how reliable is the information, and have they worked with other municipalities, and what are their experiential results from both from the company's judgment about their efficacy as well as the municipality's judgment of their efficacy. Do you know what I mean? In other words, sometimes a company will say, here's how effective we were. Well, we can compare that with on-the-ground results of here how effective we thought it was. Because it's a new idea, it's something that I'm particularly interested in because I'm not sure it's been that well tested yet. The reliability of this information is really everything for us. I mean, it ends up becoming sort of almost an ad hoc community voice for us. Which brings me to my second point. Are the qualifications, once one is installed on this panel, would it be anonymous? Is it a non-disclosure agreement that gets signed or something? Is it for them to be a part of it? I don't know how this connects with being a part of the public process. Sorry, I just have a couple of questions of how it really works. The one thing that we have to be careful of is when people are on that panel, that they can get lobbied for certain positions like anybody else, and then that pool becomes less objective, assuming what we're going for is an objective, sampling of the community. So those are not to derail this idea, because I think it's an interesting idea, and perhaps in the long run more economic and can help us keep in touch with the citizen base. But it has to be reliable, and that's the thing I'm most concerned about.
And you've touched on 2 points that at the staff level we've discussed quite a bit, and I think we're really going to have to wait till we see the RFQ responses to have clear answers, but I agree wholeheartedly. One other additional thing that relates to your second point is just as you have this group in place over time and they're focusing on city issues more and more, are they going to become less and less representative of the population as they feel closer and closer to the city or more part of the city?
And I would imagine that they've probably dealt with this, and maybe it's a rotating group, maybe they refresh it every once in a while, but I guess I want to make sure that we get all of that information before in the qualification stage. So we may want to change some of the language to that it will include as opposed to may include. Again.
Yeah, and this is really just
if we can just be agreed that those are things that we want to vet before we would, go forward. Those are my concerns.
We'll make sure that's reflected in the RFQ.
I have a question that goes to a bit of what Brad was saying in terms of people being anonymous, and that is, in this process, do you know, is there an effort to hear from people that we don't normally hear from? In other words, let me put it, the flip side of that coin is weed out individuals who may be contacted or may apply for this who are individuals that we hear from all the time. Because, and the only reason I say that, maybe this is just my own personal bias on this, but usually folks we hear from all of the time tend to have, and I don't say this in a negative way, but it is there typically, is some kind of agenda, something that they're carrying around and they want us to know about. And I think it seems like in a process like this, it's important to hear from those that we don't normally hear from, because those are the kind of the hidden nooks and crannies that are really going to tell us the information we're looking for. I don't know if the rest of the council shares that, but it's just something that came to mind.
Ron?
The only question I had is, do we have any local cities that we know have done this?
Yeah, there are a couple.
Yeah, let me comment on a couple of the questions in the research we've done. First of all, as far as the number of people who would be in one of these panels, it's significantly higher than the surveys we've done in the past. For example, we've done phone surveys in the past that tend to be 500 to 800 people typically. In a panel survey like this, we would see in a city the size of San Carlos upwards of 2,000 people, so it would be a much larger sample. That's the first point. The second point, to Councilmember Grocot's question about being able to select the people, the way the anonymity that Councilmember Lewis talked about is guaranteed, if you will, is the vendor manages the panel. The city has no relationship to the panel, so we don't know who those people are. So there's really no way, to get to Matt's question, for us to sort of select or not select. I believe one of you asked the question about refreshing the panel. The vendor, that's part of the service they would do for the city. That is, as people move away or as people drop out, the vendor would recreate the panel in terms of those specific demographics. In other words, they would refresh the panel. But the idea is, as Mr. Maltby described, you'd establish this panel, and then I believe Councilmember Grocott said about going back to the well. That's exactly how it works. You can ask specific questions,
And another reason for the survey size being as large as it is you can also, you don't have to go back to the whole group on certain surveys. You could go to a certain part of town or certain neighborhood if you wished. So what it does is it provides the council an opportunity to ask questions on a broader scale. And to Councilmember Grocott and also Councilmember Grisilli's question about have other cities done this before, it is a bit of an emerging trend. We've talked to a number of cities that are doing this. Their rationale is that more and more, because people are busy with their careers and their lives, and also because of things like what we're doing here as far as televising meetings, cities are finding that over the last 10 years, you don't really get as many people testifying in public at a meeting as you used to. And certainly in the time I've been here, I've noticed that as well. We don't have as much testimony as we used to. So these cities are utilizing these so-called deep panels to get literally thousands of people to weigh in on critical decisions. And on the cities that we have talked to so far, they're very, very pleased with how it's working out.
So the proposal, Jeff, is that you'll come back to us the first meeting in November with an RFQ?
With probably a recommended vendor from the RFQ.
Recommended vendor.
We're going to
Okay.
issue the RFQ this week. We're going to put it
Okay,
out.
so you're ready to go with that?
Yep.
Okay, very good. I think it's an excellent idea. I hope it works. So we'll look forward to the next chapter.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Next item is public comment. This is a time for public comment regarding members not on the posted agenda. I don't have any speaker slips. Would anyone like? Yes. Thank you.
My name is Gail Gose. I live in San Carlos. I've lived here for 6.5 years. I'm asking that you consider a smoking ban, similar to Belmont's, or perhaps going at a slower pace, starting out with maybe businesses or other public properties, keeping a certain distance from other people, let's say. That's basically what I'm asking for. That's my whole comment. Does anyone have a question? Or
Very good, Gail. Thank you for mentioning that.
hopefully you'll consider it at a later date?
We'll put it under advisement as part of our planning process, right. Anyone else? Okay, moving along, we have unfinished business, consideration of award contract for sanitary sewer rehabilitation project. Henry.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. This project is a part of city's ongoing sewer replacement program. On July 23rd, City Council adopted the plans and specification for the 2007 sanitary sewer and rehab project at various locations. This project involves the replacement of 7,500 feet of sewer main and 80 service line. It also including the install of 160 new clean out and 25 manholes adjustment at 29 locations. On September 13, 7 bids were received, range from $828,680 to $1.86 million. The low bidder was submitted by McNamara and Smallman in the amount of $828,680. This concludes my short presentation. I'm available to answer any question you have.
Thank you. Any questions on this subject?
To me, the question is, when I read it, there's such a wide discrepancy, and we issue pretty straightforward needs, or on these projects. Is there any explaining the range of 8 to 1.8?
Well, the original estimate, the engineer estimate is $1.1 million a couple of months ago if you do it. But the estimate was revised later due to some of the bid result opened by other agency. So that changed it. If you have a project advertising early summer, the bid seems to be a little bit higher. But right now, I think in September, all the contractors are hungry for projects. So we actually got the really good bids on that. So
Okay. Thank you.
I have a follow-up question to that. I thought the same thing, and I just, not to question staff as though they're not, haven't done this necessarily, but I just wanted to check and get the answer on, once you've received the bid from the low bidder, verifying that they've got everything covered, they've covered all the bases, things we were asking for, and they're not going to be coming back to us for change orders or squawking that they didn't see this or that, and coming back at us for something else.
after the bid opened, we did discuss the bid result with the low bidder, so they are agree with all the bid prices.
So we feel comfortable with
Yes,
them?
they are.
Yeah, very good. Okay, thank you.
Any others? Have a motion to approve?
So moved?
Second?
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Lewis?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes?
Mayor Davis?
Yes. Next is, on behalf of the Belmont San Carlos Fire Department, authorization to purchase a new engine.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, the revised and restated Joint Powers Agreement with the Belmont San Carlos Fire Department has a provision within it that large purchases over $100,000 requires the prior approval of the member agencies. The fire department reports to us that they've received a $325,000 grant for a new fire engine. They are hoping to move forward with the purchase of that engine. There is no impact reported in this fiscal year's budget. There will be in subsequent budgets as we pay for the differential amount between the grant award and the actual cost of the engine, which is $443,000. We're asking that the City Council consider granting the authority for the Belmont San Carlos Fire Department to go ahead with that purchase. And if you have questions about the engine, because I'm not an expert in that area, Gary Fowles is here this evening to answer any questions about the engine or the purchase.
Just confirming, we're replacing a piece of fairly old equipment, as I recall.
1984.
1984, Gary? Okay. Been around a long time. Any other questions?
I was wondering if you could add a little trundle seat on the back of that so I could ride on that bad boy on a couple of the calls. Just an idea.
That sounds like a question for Gary.
Sorry.
Consider it done.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to make a comment. I don't mean to speak for Mr. Grocott, who's also on the fire board, but I want to make sure that the department is complimented to get a grant for $325,000, which means the net is about $118,000 cost to the fire Belmont San Carlos Fire Department, where it could have been that $300,000. I mean, that's to me is unbelievable, and this is not the first one that we've gotten in the last few months. I think we had a $177,000 grant for some other equipment that we got.
The masks.
The masks and so on. I mean, the firefighters are. It's not. I'd love to take credit. The fire board's doing a great job getting all these grants, but the fire people who work in the fire department, the rank and file as well as the BCs and everybody from top to bottom, the chief and all the way down, everybody's pitching in to try to figure out ways to cost cut on this puppy. And I mean, to me, this is just. I think we're the only. Or one of the first ones to get a grant like this in the whole state, I believe. And the BCs are nodding their heads that that's correct. So I just want to make sure that credit is given where credit is due on this. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us.
Well said. Would you like to give a wholehearted motion to approve?
I would like to make a motion to approve this purchase.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call?
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Mayor Davis?
Yes. And our final item on the agenda is consideration of a resolution authorizing the city manager to sign the contract for the purchase and implementation of design-build video broadcast improvements and remote site origination system.
Good evening again, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Jeff Malpe, Administrative Services Director. This project is part of the city's capital improvement program, as well as a project called out in the city's strategic plan under the goal to enhance public communication and customer service. The goal is, in fact, to enhance the city's cable television channel and functions. The money used for this program, the $281,000 contained in the CIP for this program all relates to Comcast franchise grant monies that the city receives. The money is restricted that we receive from Comcast for the sole purpose of purchasing and maintaining equipment that supports the development of content for the city's cable channel, SCTV Cable Channel 27, that many people are probably watching right now and will be watching as this meeting is rebroadcast over the next couple weeks. There are several different elements to the proposed project. The first element and the main focus of the project deals with equipment that supports this room, the council chambers, and broadcast from here. We would be placing 3 remotely operated cameras into this room, one behind the council that would be looking back at this podium, high up above the council, looking back, not at the council, but at the podium, the staff, and the audience, and the 2 camera in relatively similar positions that you see throughout the room now. The cameras would be operated not by operators in the room as currently happens, but remotely in the side room over here. In addition, the equipment that supports the scheduling and playback of the meetings will be housed in this room. Here we'll be replacing all that equipment. In fact, one of the weakest components of the system that we currently have is the scheduling component. Our scheduler kicks off, and meetings that have been published to be rebroadcast or missed. That's been one of the main complaints over the last 4 years. We did replace the entire audio system in this room just a few years ago using Comcast grant money. I think we're satisfied with the audio right now. When people turn off their cell phones, it works particularly good. When they don't, sometimes you get the beeping sound that we just heard a few minutes ago. But it seems to be getting better as we make those announcements to turn off cell phones. In addition, we'll be putting an audio system at the library, as well as purchasing some portable cameras and broadcast equipment. We'll be putting in a small system in the back room so that we can produce our own public service announcements, as you've seen on the channel with the fire chief and the police chief, and some other things to try to have a little bit of video content talking about the city and our programs. Those are the main elements of the project as it's proposed. There's one other element in addition to the $225,000 that's sort of outside the scope of this particular contract that we will be doing work on, and that is replacing the screen up here, this public podium. The PowerPoint system will be done electronically to an electronic screen, as well as the purchase and installation of a document camera, which is basically a fancy overhead projector for public works and planning and the folks that like to put up the maps for you. So images should be a lot clearer in this room for you as well as the audience, and broadcast digitally at home during the actual council presentations on TV. So be happy to answer any specific questions you might have about the project.
And just one question, and that is the difference in the funds, the 225 to the 281. What happens to the remainder of that PEG money?
It stays in the project for either future pieces, or, like I said, the audio-video component of the project is outside the Seatronics contract. We're going to do that ourselves. It's just some smaller equipment that we're going to purchase and put in. But there will be some remaining money that we'll hold, and in fact, there are actually future payments that will be owed to the city from Comcast as part of the franchise agreement. So there'll be some additional money here in years to come.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff, will the system be operable by one person then, or will it still need 2 while we're in session?
We will actually have one operator, which reduces the city's costs, and I don't know if you recall, but as part of the 2007-2008 budget that you adopted earlier this summer, we actually reduced the budget for those services as a cost-cutting measure. So the city will save a little bit of money from week to week.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Any other questions for Jeff? Is there a motion to approve item 9B?
I would move approval of item 9B.
Is there a second?
Second?
And we have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis?
Yes.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Mayor Davids?
Yes. And that concludes our meeting for this evening. Thank you all for coming. And to be reminded, we meet again on October 8th at the Hiller Museum as we consider the issue with the Palo Alto Medical Foundation. Thank you.